Hey everybody, we'll call a meeting to order, and good to see everybody here. We've got some folks online. We're going to introduce ourselves in just a minute, let everybody know who we are. And
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry, got stuck in the elevator.
that's not very accessible.
No, didn't announce anything. Annette. Thanks.
I can sit at the table.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rude. I didn't want to take a committee member's chair.
Well, this is our very first meeting of the Accessibility and Equity Advisory Committee. We're kind of excited about that. We're going to be meeting quarterly, and privilege for me to chair this. And so what I thought we'd do is kind of go around the table, introduce ourselves. We'll have more protocol as the meetings ensue. Right now, this is our first meeting, so we won't have to adopt any minutes or anything like that. So I thought we'd go around the table, and our folks viewing us on Zoom will include you in the loop as well. So maybe I'll start maybe over here, and Gabriel will introduce himself around. We even have the mayor with us joining us today, which is pretty good. So Gabriel, please go ahead.
I'm Gabriel Joseph. I'm the city clerk and director of legislative services.
Ross Siemens, and I have the honor of being mayor.
I'm Annette Borrows, and I'm the manager of employment services for Community Living BC provincially.
I'm Joanne Kaminsky, and myself and my husband have disabilities, and I'm an RCMP member.
I'm Pradeep Agnihotri. I am the General Manager of Operations. I look after city facilities, including fire and police buildings. So a lot of the accessible reports will come from those buildings as well to this committee.
Good morning, Mark Neal, General Manager of Planning and Development Services. And we look after all the, well, I'll get into it in our slide, but all the long-range planning functions as well as development and building permits.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Stewartson. I'm the General Manager of Parks, Recreation, Culture, and that's pretty self-explanatory. I deal with Parks, Recreation, Culture items.
No.
Good morning, I'm Nathan Koning, General Manager, Engineering and Regional Utilities. So the real traditional engineering elements such as water and sewer, but also transportation where accessibility certainly does come into play.
I'm Patricia Dreesen. I'm on council with Mr. Gibson, and I'm the alternate chair to this committee. So when he is unavailable, then I'll be filling in for him.
That's right. Good to have you here. And our people on Zoom, do you want to introduce yourselves, please?
I can go.
Yeah, go
My
ahead,
name
please.
is Gina. I am graduating as a social worker from the University of the Fraser Valley in March. I have a disability and so do my children. And I have to leave at 11 o'clock to go to class to make a presentation. Thank you.
And upper right-hand corner, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Irina, and I have a son with a disability. He has autism, so that's why I can see many situations from this side as a mother of son with disabilities. And we also from Ukraine, so as foreigner people, newcomers in Canada. Thank you.
Pradeep.
Great. We've got a good group. We're going to have a good start here. I want to just begin with one little story and how I kind of see our committee. I was at a conference in Whistler a couple of years ago with a friend of mine who's basically quadriplegic, and she's in a wheelchair. She's a good friend of mine. And we got invited to a reception, a luncheon reception. So we all went over there. But guess what? She couldn't get in. She couldn't get in. They even tried to run her through the service entrance. And suddenly, suddenly realized for the first time, having a friend in a wheelchair, how frustrating it was for her. So she couldn't come to the reception and had to just go back to a hotel room. So that's kind of a little vivid memory for me to start today. So we're going to have this is going to be a productive meeting. We're going to do some good things here for the benefit of our citizens, all citizens in our community. So I'm looking forward to working with you. I know Patricia would be a good vice chair as well. I know the mayor is really interested in this file as well. So I'll turn things over to Gabriel. We've got a bit of a procedure here, and what are we missing here? Okay. Should we move a motion to move that? I can. Okay. We need a motion to adopt the agenda as circulated and moved by,
I can move that.
and seconded by, good, move and seconder. Okay, thank you very much.
You need to call a vote.
All in favor? Look at that, unanimity. We're beginning on a good note right away here. Unanimous. Okay, Gabriel, it's all yours.
Just wait while the presentation comes. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Gabriel and I'm the city clerk or the director of legislative services. So if you have any questions on parliamentary procedure or legislative processes or anything like that, that's all in my department. As well, all of the staff in my department handle all of the things related to agendas and distribution of those, as well as meetings. Okay, so I'm going to walk through part of that underlying so you understand why we just did what we did, depending. Some people have different backgrounds. Some people have never sat on a committee. Some people have been on committees for 20 years. Our committee processes are laid out in legislation, which means we do everything by the book. And I'm going to walk through that. Katie, is that clicked on? There we go. Okay. So I'm just going to provide you with an overview of some of the functions and processes, and then the GMs are going to actually walk through the individual departments in the city. So this committee comes from the Accessible British Columbia Act. When the province passed this part, they said that every organization, including local governments, has to have this type of committee, where we're identifying barriers for individuals as well as ways to remove those barriers. And we also need to come up with an accessibility plan. So that's something that this committee is going to be looking at. So within this, you all have a copy of the terms of reference. We're also going to circulate our committee protocol policy to you electronically. There's one member of council, which is Councillor Gibson, who's the chair. Councillor Dreesen is the alternate chair. We have 5 members and 3 at large. I believe we have 1 vacant right now, which will be filled. Per the terms of reference, just as is noted in the provincial legislation, the purpose of this committee is to identify barriers interacting with the city as well as ways that we can improve those. And that's why all of members of the committee have experience either personally or through people they know and people who've had barriers within our community. So just so you know how a city council works, if you're not aware, the city operates on a 1-employee model, which means that city council directs the city manager, who then directs all the rest of us in what to do. Normally what happens with city council is that the staff will bring a report to council of some kind, whether it be policy, bylaw, anything like that, to which council will make a yea or nay decision. Okay. Now, for an advisory committee, that can happen one of 2 ways, where maybe the city manager may direct a staff member to bring a staff report to an advisory committee, which we will then form a report that goes back to council. Or city council may direct the city manager, listen, we'd like the committee to look at this issue, and which then we will bring a report to the committee in a sense. What you need to understand is that this is an advisory committee only. You have no decision-making ability, you have no ability to direct budgets, you have no ability to direct staff. This is simply advisory. You are giving your best recommendation to council, who can then decide to endorse or not endorse, okay? Just to set the expectation on what this is here for, okay? The decision-making power always rests with council. So when we're talking about agendas, what's going to happen, your agendas are set for you, either through the city manager or through council, and those are set prior to the meeting, okay? You would have received an Outlook invitation for this meeting. Those are very important that you stay on top of within your inbox, okay? And if you don't receive something from us by Friday prior to the meeting, you know you may have an issue. Look in your junk folder. If you didn't get it, contact us. We'll make sure it's all set. The reason that those are important, first of all, to respond to us so that we know who's coming. If we don't have quorum, that's an issue, which I'll get into later. But all of your agenda packages, including all of your documents, anything like that, are going to be attached to that invitation. Okay, so when you click on that meeting invitation, all of your documents will come up in there. Okay, and if they don't, contact us and we'll make sure it's get fixed. You're only permitted to discuss items that are on your agenda. Your agendas are set for you by the city manager and by council. So that because that is directing the time that staff are spending on that. That's why you can't go off into different things because of the cost of doing it. For attendance, we monitor this through our e-invite, okay? If we don't have a quorum, we don't have a meeting. There's no such thing as just sitting around talking about something to see what happens. We don't have a quorum, the meeting is canceled, everybody goes home. So it's really important for us to know, so please respond to your meeting invites to say, yes, I can come, no, I can't, okay? And we know that sometimes people can't, that's fine. If you are going to be attending online, I know right now this morning, Irina and Gina are online. Please confirm for us in advance. I know this was the first meeting, but if you're ever going to have to attend online, that's fine. But we need to do technical checks with you before the meeting, as you would have seen us doing here. Okay, so you sign on a half hour before the meeting just so we can make sure because issues happen, okay? As I mentioned, quorum is required. If we do not have quorum, we don't have a meeting. If you miss 3 absences, or if you have 3 absences in a row, you are removed from the committee. Okay. As you just noted, on your agenda, if you look at, Katie, do you want to bring up the agenda for a second for me? So you will see this agenda is set up for all of your meetings, and your committee only does things by motion. Okay, so you literally, once the chair calls the meeting to order, as it just did, there'll be a mover and a seconder for everything you do. Okay, if a motion does not have a seconder, it's dead and it does not go forward. Okay, that's why you, as a group, have to agree on your agenda. When you get down to reports, we don't have any recommendations today, but there may be one in the future you get where it's a report on an accessibility issue, and you may recommend to council to do X, whatever that action is. Okay, so then you vote on that, and you have a chance to discuss that. But that has to happen on every motion. Katie, do you want to bring up the minutes for a second, please? So this is the way that your minutes will look. So you can see under the adoption of the agenda where we clearly have identified, okay, who moved it, who seconded it, if somebody was in favor, if they were absent, if they were opposed. Okay. This also comes into play at the next meeting when your minutes are on there. So you are verifying that the minutes are accurate. Okay, we do not do verbatim minutes. Okay, so I'm not writing down everything that you say. We only do motions and action-based minutes. Okay, so that's how our minutes will look when they go forward. Now let's go back to my PowerPoint. So with that second point under motions, that's typically for those of you who haven't been on committees before, there's a movement and a seconder, then you can have discussion, and once that's done, then you vote on it. Now for voting, this is required on all motions. In BC, you are not allowed to abstain from a vote. If you do not indicate a vote, you are counted as being in the affirmative. That's different in different provinces, but you cannot abstain. You're either for it or you're against it. The chair has full voting rights. So when Councillor Gibson is gone and Councillor Dreesen happens to fill in, that chair, whoever is in that seat, has a vote. It's not a vote to break a tie, it's a vote. Okay, and they're counted as such. A tie vote, per Robert's rules, is defeated, and that motion fails. So if it happens to be, if there's only 4 people in the room, tie vote fails. You are more than welcome to let the chair know how you feel about certain things if you're going to be absent, but a proxy vote is not permitted. So you may be in favor or against something, but your vote doesn't count if you're not here. And to that point, when we're actually doing the vote, we will have everyone displayed on the screen. If you are joining online, if your camera is off, you are not in the meeting. I cannot count you if I can't see you. Okay, so just know for that point when you're joining the meeting, please leave your camera on if you happen to be online. Okay. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions on procedure because I know it's an exciting topic for some of you. And you may not have any now. This may be something as you go forward and you're wondering, it's like, well, what the heck is this or how does that work? Anytime you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them and walk you through anything. Okay.
Thanks, Gabriel. And I think the bottom line is we take this seriously, right? The fact that you're here and you have some things you want to share that get to council, we take them seriously. So that's why this is quite a formal meeting, not just a bunch of people getting together and chatting. So it's a good thing. And I think I'll turn it over to Gabriel now, who's going to introduce our city general managers. Is that right?
I'm going to let the general managers introduce themselves because they are
I
so
think they've already,
smart
spoken, but we
capable.
want to, each general manager has a dimension to their responsibilities that will be useful to the accessibility and equity advisory committee. So should we start with Nathan and work our way down?
Well, they'll be making presentations.
Pardon?
Yeah, they'll be making presentations from the podium.
Are you going to come to the podium? Okay.
I drew the short straw, so I just stepped up to the podium first.
That's the only thing about him that's short is the straw.
Thanks, that's good. So good morning, everyone. Just to reiterate, I'm Todd Stewartson. I'm the General Manager of Parks, Recreation and Culture. We have just a brief presentation, a few slides, just to talk about departmental services and kind of put kind of responsibilities to some of the names that you see in the room today and others that are in the background that may be in future meetings. So again, that's our intent, as I just articulated. The city has 9 departments, so you'll see planning and development services represented here. You'll see operations, you'll see engineering and regional utilities. We also have a Department of Innovation, Strategy and Intergovernmental Affairs. Ms. Catherine Traylor is the general manager of that area. We have a legal and legislative services department. Gabriel and his team are part of that, and Mr. Anise Alani is the general manager there. We have Fire and Rescue Services, and our Chief, Eric Peterson, heads up that group. We have Finance and Procurement Services. They're not always present, but they're always in the background because everything we do has some implication on finance. And Mr. Komal Bisatia is our General Manager there. And we have an airport, and Mr. Parm Sidhu is our General Manager there. Airport's a little bit different. They operate with an airport authority, so there's a bit of a different mechanism there, but we'll get into that in a few moments. Just for context, we want to talk a little bit about kind of who's going to be some of the regular people that you'll see in these chairs. So first up will be Pardeep, talking about kind of what he does and who will be involved in some of the topics he brings forward.
So thank you. I'll come over there. Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Thank you, Chair. So in my day-to-day role, I am the General Manager of Operations. So basically everything to do with public works, water, sewer, drainage, roads, parks, maintenance of existing assets is what we look after. I've got about 260 staff members that operate and maintain our existing infrastructure. In addition to that, I support our planning general managers, general manager PRC, engineering, or planning and development in implementation of some of the key strategic initiatives. For this committee, I oversee and implement a lot of the accessibility initiatives that we may come up with in our city buildings to enhance the customer service to our customers as well as to our staff and increase our accessibility to staff and customers. In terms of roads and sidewalks and parks, those will also be implemented by my staff, or our engineering and regional utility has a project management office that will do large-scale projects. So that's where I will bring from time to time updates on different projects and different initiatives that we're carrying out. One last thing is we have been doing assessment of our current buildings. We haven't done all of them. We've done our recreation centers. We've done some of our civic facilities, such as Exhibition Park is in progress right now. And there are different projects that have come out of those assessments that we're in the process of looking at, reviewing, and prioritizing based on our budget availability and resource availability. So those updates will be coming to this committee from time to time. So that's about it. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
I do have a question when it comes to that. When assessing, are there any people with disabilities actually helping with that assessment?
That's a very good question. We use Rick Hansen's foundation. I forget the complete name, I apologize. The foundation does a lot of assessment work for different buildings, and when they complete the report, they give us 3 different categories of building. One is something that we can do right away with very little effort or money, something that we need to plan for medium term, and something that we need to plan for long term because they've got big financial implications for those projects. So, so these are folks that have knowledge and they have the ability to do these assessments.
Perfect, thank you.
And maybe just add to that the Hansen Foundation also delves into the area of services. So if there's a physical component, but it helps enhance the service, they'll also make those recommendations, provide us with guidance there. So a simple example would be an audio loop in a facility that may support those that have some level of hearing challenges. So, while there's a physical component, they actually put a service lens on it as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Great, good morning. Just to reintroduce myself, Mark Neal, General Manager of Planning and Development Services. So in Planning and Development Services, there are generally 3 areas that we look after. There's community planning that deals with the long-range planning function for the city, and that forecasts and plans out how the city is going to grow over the next 20, 30 years. Then there's development planning. Development planning looks after all the development applications, whether that's a rezoning, a subdivision, a development permit, and some of the environmental regulations as well. And then finally, that trickles down to a building permit, where we have a team of building officials that review and issue building permits and business licenses as well. This committee here will likely interact with some of that work, primarily at the community planning stage, where we're looking at our long-range plans or policy developments on certain aspects of development. We are about to embark on an update to our official community plan. Our official community plan is a document, it's the overarching document that sets a vision for the city. It outlines how the city is going to grow and gets into some of the regulations of how that can land on the ground through rezoning and building permit applications. So I anticipate we'll be back to this committee with some of that work in the coming months. As far as, so that deals primarily with the private property, private investments and development side. Pardeep's group does a lot of that capital work, so dealing with projects that are city-led. A lot of these developments also have an engineering component where we rely on the developers to upgrade the roads, the pipes, and those types of things. So we have standards, we have a development bylaw that outlines those standards, and we work closely with Nathan and his team in engineering to keep that development bylaw updated. And we work with the developers to implement and to build that infrastructure related to their project. So again, from time to time, this committee may interact with that development bylaw if and when there are any updates that are relevant to this group as well. Happy to take any questions.
Good. All right.
None? All right. Back to Todd.
Fine job, there's no questions.
Getting off easy. They're saving them for later.
I have so many questions. Don't even know where to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what we're here for. So maybe just kind of the third realm that I want to talk about is the service piece. So I'll be the primary person representing that, but it certainly involves a whole range of departments that I mentioned earlier. It could be, and it's pretty broad. I word gray accordingly because it is a bit of the gray area. Could be some of the in-person services we provide, could be digital points of interaction. One easy example is in some of our parks consultation, we've now added a QR code so that people can actually scan and get a translation. So we're looking at it from a language accessibility standpoint. Not everybody speaks English as their first language in the community, so trying to make some improvements there. There's a range of services that are very resident intensive when it comes to interaction, whether it's taxation, whether it's our website, whether it's our recreation centers, our parks. So that kind of lens around those services, so not necessarily facilities or some of the planning pieces or some of the infrastructure, that kind of falls as kind of that third category of topic that we'll be bringing forward to you. So, and you'll see some of my colleagues, Catherine, as I mentioned, the General Manager of Innovation Strategy and Intergovernmental Affairs. She'll certainly be involved in a number of these topics, or her staff. Finance and procurement services. Again, when we talk about things like equity, we want to ensure that financial considerations are put in there too. Not everybody necessarily has the means to access all of our services, so we kind of put a lens of financial accessibility to things too. So yeah, that kind of covers the service area. I'm happy to take any questions in that realm, or we can save them to the end.
I guess one of my big overarching questions is, I think it's the job of this committee and the city to identify any of the barriers that are currently happening in our city, right? That we're responsible for, and then identify ways, first identify them and then figure out ways to remedy those concerns. And I think it touches on each of the departments to figure out a way, how do you identify, and I know we have to have a feedback mechanism from the public that advises this plan and ongoing sort of ways to say, hey, this, I know you're trying, but this doesn't work for me, or whatever that might be. So is there work that's been started, or a way that these barriers or ways that people can't participate in the community, have they started, has that been started?
So a bit of that work is ongoing. And we talked about facilities that Mr. Agriculture mentioned. He has a plan to essentially engage the Ricanson Foundation on a regular basis to do audits of our facilities. They are now moved into open space realm. They didn't do that originally when they were doing these audits. They were restricted to facilities. Credit to them, they've undertaken some training and brought the people on board that they can now do open space audits. So when I say open space, things like parks,
Yeah.
right, near and dear to me, obviously, in the
I know
professional
Rick
realm.
Hansen went with my daughter to Mill Lake to the dock because she helped build the accessibility docks across the province with freshwater fisheries. So I know they've been fishing together several, he loves fishing. So he helped design the Mill Lake dock. Like, that's an example
Great.
of what they'll do, but I guess, yeah, go ahead, keep going.
The other piece that allows for a lot of dialogue with the community on this is a lot of our consultation that we do. So virtually every project we have, there's some level or form of consultation where we're out with the public, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person, whether it's a combination of the two, and allowing for those opportunities, encouraging those opportunities in a lot of cases to provide that type of feedback around, hey, this needs to be improved from an accessibility lens or an equity lens. We also have a number of kind of smaller projects that are kind of departmental based. One of the things we're working on in Parks, Recreation and Culture for next year is a review kind of our subsidy program. As I touched on that financial piece, we're reviewing that. How do we make improvements to that from all lenses of accessibility and equity, not just the financial piece. We have a lot of I can tell you firsthand, we've in the past couple of weeks we've seen new families coming in. Language is a barrier. They're looking for access to recreation services or sport or just general kind of wellness through our recreation centers. We have a program. It's a good program. We're proud of it. We can certainly make improvements there to make it a little bit more accessible for the broader community. So lots of avenues there, and then we'll be bringing forward some initiatives as well, not the least of which will be the accessibility plan. We want to bring a draft early in 2024. And that's, I guess, as a staff member, that's kind of what we're looking for this group, is to provide your experience and expertise and insights to help guide us. So when we have something, as our clerk noted earlier, when we have something going forward to council, it's well thought out, it's well articulated, it's been well vetted.
Yeah, there are some cities that are well ahead of, so have people looked at in Burnaby and Whistler has done massive improvements and like we don't have to recreate the wheel. I mean, there's good work already being done.
Yeah. Yes, and we've actually, as a staff group, had the opportunity to review some, just a sampling. Richmond, and if my memory slips, either Mark or Pradeep can help me. Richmond was on the list, Maple Ridge was on the list, Surrey was on the list. Chilliwack, thank you. Yeah. So seeing what others do, Delta was in there. I know I've had some discussions with them. So certainly seeing what others are doing and trying to take some of those best practices, or even more importantly, take some of those successes and say, how do we implement them here, right?
What is Abbotsford's baseline, piggybacking on that? Do we know where we stand with comparison to other communities? Or is it just kind of like, we're not 100% sure, or it's hard to measure, I know that, but
Yeah.
do we have like any feeling on that, or?
And I think you hit it on the head there. It is very difficult to measure. Because a lot of communities are still building up their framework of even reporting out on this. It's very difficult to say where are we at from an apples and apples standpoint, even kind of facility to facility. Again, Rick Hansen, their foundation has been a good benchmark for us to be able to say like, hey, show us some examples of where this is successful or where some improvements were made that are actually bringing meaningful change. But right now, I think it's pretty difficult to actually kind of do the benchmarking piece across all the municipalities because each one is different. It's unique. So,
Agreed. So the chair, yeah, it is difficult. Yeah, we might be able to compare between facilities, but when it comes to maybe to some extent within roads and how we're doing with our sidewalks and everything. But overall, as a city, I think it would be difficult. But it is something we can look into eventually once we get the framework set up. First thing is to get the framework set up, the terms of this committee, and as we get going, as we go through more meetings, I think we'll have, as we bring more information, we might be able to come up with something that we can measure with other cities, right?
Yeah, maybe just one example of something that I've reached out to other communities on, and that's facility signage for recreation centers. Some organizations, municipalities are going to multilingual signage, right? Well, you may have 4, 6, 8 signs on. Others are going to just symbols, right? To do away with, hey, let's see if we can move away from a language barrier and just put some kind of visual in there. But then the other factor in there being, well, okay, but you can't just simply have a flat sign, because if somebody has a visual challenge, right, they need some sort of tactile. One of the things I learned going through this process is, Braille is not necessarily the solution for everybody. A raised or recessed, so you can kind of feel, well, is that a male figure or a female figure, or is this a universal washroom? And having symbols for that. I know I learned a lot in very few discussions with some of my peers and colleagues. So, but again, benchmarking that is pretty difficult because some are still going with multilingual signage.
I also serve federally with the Accessibility Act, and so I know the difficulty of a federal building, a post office is completely accessible, but you can't get there because the bus doesn't have the right, ramp degree for a chair to get. So while the building is 100% accessible, you can't get there. And then it flows down to your province, and then it flows down to each municipality, but then it further flows down to the general population. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that while we're talking about this, the city's role in how to provide accessibility for what they're responsible for, to know that it sends a message to the broader community. And a small example could be, like, I know when COVID hit and a lot of businesses started doing sandwich signs that said wear a mask before entering and so on and so forth. My sister's blind, and she said she fell on so many signs and smashed her face into plexiglass, and because all these things were being put up for the safety of the public, but they became very unsafe for her. So, as a city, you potentially have the messaging mechanism to say, please be aware that sidewalks are still needing, people still need to access the sidewalk in a safe way. And while it might be part of their business, of course, just to sort of send some messaging to the broader public. And if we're doing a good job at the city, then you have a little bit more credibility maybe to do something that can flow down to the smaller businesses and the community as a whole, that people start thinking more about it.
Good, those are good comments.
I had one more to, sorry. Don't mean to drag the meeting on so long, but are you considering any public surveys? I've seen them before for like Mill Lake, for example, to give the people in the community their voice, like to kind of rate certain areas of accessibilities, or to allow them to bring a story or an example that we might not have considered because, we're not blind, so we wouldn't have considered that. Or do we have any plans to potentially reach out to the public and ask for their input and kind of?
So maybe I'll talk about that on a project by project basis, and I look to my other colleagues here if they have some examples. But I know, for example, Mill Lake is a great example. Doing public consultation on that. Again, we don't claim to be experts in all manners of kind of the public realm on that. So we actually tasked our consultant with building questions that helps draw that information out, right? So that we can actually ensure there's an appropriate environment for people to say, yes, I have some accessibility challenges with using the park as it is, right? And here's a way improvements could be made, right? Not everyone is kind of comfortable in that form. That's also why we allow for, or encourage emails or phone calls, like we list a contact person there, because it might be a little bit more complicated or nuanced than we can articulate in, a 2-page survey on that. And I'm proud to say that our Parks Planning Manager, Melissa Price, has received a great deal of correspondence directly, whether it's phone calls or emails, outside of the survey process. Not all necessarily accessibility or equity, but allowing people to have that conversation with an actual person as opposed to putting something in the Let's Talk site, which is great, but again, doesn't always capture, all of the nuances of our residents, so.
Thank you. Is there still a social advisory committee? Do you have a social advisory committee?
No, but some of those
It's
topics
similar.
are under Access Abbotsford.
Right, okay.
Any questions or queries from our online folks who are listening in? We've got some good discussion going here this morning in our inaugural meeting here. Okay, that's
Thank you very much. I don't have questions. I'm just trying to figure out how all this committee is going on and how can I be helpful in today and in future. So if I will have questions, I definitely will ask. Thank you.
Well, I could maybe just say as a staff group, we're pretty excited about the kind of help and guidance that this group can provide us. I mean, just your backgrounds, your insights, your experiences. I mean, we're excited about this as a staff group, looking for that kind of input and, a lot of those, as I said, nuances that maybe we don't understand because we haven't lived that life. So.
Good.
We have a couple more slides on our presentation, maybe just kind of wrap up here. Pardeep covered his, Pardeep took all his talking points. So.
okay. He looked like he wanted to speak, so.
I want to make a point, if I may, Chair. I was just going to say, this is awesome conversation. I've been managing facilities I've been here with the city for 17 years, and I've been managing facilities for the last 10, 12 years. And I've never had this opportunity to sit down with people like yourself. So I'm already learning a lot. I think this is mind-blowing. I love it. So this is a start for us to go.
I haven't even talked about those sidewalks that are crooked.
That's okay. That's okay.
I have lots of video of my husband bombing around in his wheelchair around Abbotsford, so
And
there's
you know
some
what?
positives and negatives.
And this, I always take it as, if we can't do something right away, we'll add to it and go and get the resources from council and see if we can do them sooner than later. Once we know, we can plan for it. If we don't know, we don't know. So I think that's what I like about this committee so far.
Good. Okay.
So maybe just kind of 3 points that I want to just highlight here a little bit outside of kind of the group here is that we also, just for awareness, we also have an internal committee. It's composed of staff. So if you hear that at any point in time, that committee's mandate is internally focused. So it is wholly and exclusively staff focused on that, not resident focused. So it's not out in the broad kind of community. Just awareness piece again, if you suddenly hear, well, why aren't we kind of part of this diversity, equity, and inclusion committee? That's an internal one only. The other piece is just a reminder that the Abbotsford Police Department is not a city department. They report to the Abbotsford Police Board, so just if there are topics that come up related to police, right, we don't really have a mechanism to action anything there or kind of engage because they don't report to us as a city technically. And then I mentioned it earlier, but just kind of an important piece there that our finance and procurement services group factors into all the decision points. So we're regularly engaging with them and bringing them along on projects. You may not see them a whole bunch, but they're certainly guiding us in the background around fiscal responsibility and how to do things most effectively and efficiently. They also have that procurement piece. They help us sort out vendors or suppliers or other people that maybe understand what we're trying to achieve with different items we'll bring forward to you. So again, just an awareness piece. You may not see them at all in kind of this committee for a couple of years, but they're always kind of supporting us as GMs and other staff members. Again, as our clerk reminds us, we always need a recommendation, even if it's none. So this was just good information, hopefully for awareness, and yeah, can leave it at that.
Yeah, those are good comments. Thank you, Todd. As far as the police department, if things come up here, we can certainly send things over, but they're not accountable to us. But if we see something, we can fire it over there, and they may choose to respond, not necessarily. But the police department is still an integral part of our community, but they're not accountable to council. And that's the point that Todd was making. Okay, we'll kind of open it up. Are there some questions or remarks? We appreciate an inaugural meeting. We're just trying to find our way here a little bit. But I think staff have done a good job of explaining the various departmental responsibilities. We're going to take this seriously, and hopefully when this committee finally runs out of steam, we'll look back and say we've made a contribution and made the city more accessible and allowed more folks from different backgrounds to engage in our services and feel more welcome in Abbotsford. So, Mayor, did you want to speak to that at all? Or?
Yeah, so I'll just, for full disclosure, Annette and I used to be on the Social Development Advisory Committee, going back probably. ASDAC, going back probably 15 years.
Okay.
So just for clarification, I think we're talking more about on the accessibility and making sure we're removing barriers. So we still do have the Access Abbotsford, which we have a housing and homelessness coordinator. So we do have staff that are coordinating those discussions, and those are all the social issues that are like whether it's the opioid crisis, the mental health challenges. So if things come up here that might be a better suit for that, we have a connection where you can raise those with Mr. Sikora and his department. So we can sort of guide that. So I know sometimes there's lots of overlap with some of those things, but this is primarily, I think, we're talking about, we're the largest geographic municipality, and we know that we've got some challenges. So I really appreciate what you've said about your husband with the wheelchair, because we know, like, for us to be even, walking down the street, we'll say, oh, I wonder how. But this really puts a focus on that we just haven't really. We've tried to consider, but until you've walked in that scenario yourself, until you've actually been in that scenario, then it gets a little more challenging. And having Irina here as well, like we all have come from somewhere. So what are the barriers? Like if there's a language barrier, if there's some sort of attitudinal barrier, we want to hear about that so that we do have the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for staff. But also important is how is that landing on people that are accessing our services. And we've got some really good community partners, so we can try and make those connections as well. We try and utilize, I think, even our interpretation, we rely heavily on Archway. They have a great interpretation. So this is a way for us to understand, from a real life perspective, and then just making sure we can help make those connections. So really important. So, if there is issues that you're really thinking about but don't really fit this mandate, by all means, I'm all ears. You know how to get a hold of me, and we can say, okay, that would be better over here, or we already have an organization working on that, but I can direct it to that staff as well.
Do you think there would come a time in the development of this plan where you would value like focus groups from individuals that maybe are wheelchair users or those that have sensory disability, or and just to say, we think we've covered it, but is there something we're missing? Or like if you wanted someone to walk or do an assessment of Mill Lake, and it's a group of individuals with mixed abilities, to come back with some, I don't know, like, I'm sure all of us have connections to people that could form some feedback if anywhere along the way.
So, through the chair, I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to give a specific example because we've already been talking about it as a staff team. A couple of years from now, we have a park standards project to standardize all the amenities in parks. That's trail resurfacing, things that Mr. Agriculture and I work on, trail resurfacing and benches and picnic tables and whatnot. I've had experience of actually engaging a group to try out different trail surfacing to ensure that, even though a manufacturer is telling us this crushed material is great for people with mobility assistance devices, I've actually had that experience of testing that in the field and adjusting the material mix accordingly. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at. Now, granted, that's a couple years out. I've already talked to the staff team about, and we need to start thinking about how do we ground test these. And certainly that's something that is, I look forward to bringing to this group and saying, how do we get the appropriate users, appropriate residents out to actually experience some of these. One of my highlights of education in this realm was about picnic tables. Lots of manufacturers provide picnic tables that have accessible opportunities at the end. right, rather than integrated into the table itself. And now some manufacturers are actually looking at that differently, saying, yeah, it needs to be more inclusive. It needs to be manufactured into the table, not kind of an afterthought on the end. My word's not theirs, but it's very kind of clear that they've picked up on that. So an example of a focus group, yes, a couple of years out, we have kind of a few things on the go that we need to get done first, but certainly we'll be mindful of those.
Well, no, it's a good suggestion. The more people we engage in the process, the better information we're going to get. So, it's good. Okay, we can kind of open it up here. Are there any other thoughts that you have? If you have, those of you who are on the committee and you want to bring suggestions forward, they're certainly welcome here. We'll try to deal with them and get the appropriate departments to address them if possible. So it's good in our inaugural meeting here.
So the committee is formed, step A. The plan is going to be developed in collaboration with your departments and input along the way, I'm assuming. Step 2, being worked on. Step 3 is the feedback mechanism of that plan, is that right? That there needs to be some way that the public can access a feedback mechanism?
Todd?
I think if I can, so our draft, we've done a bit of work on a draft framework of the plan, and that identifies a number of action items that are aligned with, council's strategic plan. So to us, I guess that's kind of step 3, is focusing on those key action items, reporting back, seeking guidance of this committee, right? Doesn't mean that, again, we can't have topics of conversation about, new items that are identified, but that's kind of our thoughts around, that's where our energies will be focused, right, is how do we make sure that those key actions are getting done, that, have a component of accessibility and equity that link into a strategic plan item, right? Or some other, corporate initiative that we're undertaking.
Pardeep?
Through the chair to Ms. Barrows. So if there are items that are sort of day to day, this sidewalk needs improvement, this area has small issues that needs to be improved upon to make it more accessible. Those are issues that can come directly to operations. They don't need to be brought at this committee because those are operational issues. I'm going to pass you my cards afterwards. I'm going to talk to you guys. And those are things that I can look after through our operations staff. I think bringing every one of those to this committee will probably bog it down in too much detail.
Right. Is there a place like on the city website where it's, a place where people can just click in and say, I have a comment about the accessibility of this community? Is that, that's what I'm talking about, is that there's a way, yeah.
I think that could be one of the initiatives that is proposed by this committee, that we develop something. And that's why we set up this committee to get those ideas. As I said, some of this is just amazing to have this discussion. So this could be one of the proposals from the committee that city developed this, where a lot of this feedback can come in from customers that have some challenges, and they can assist the city with making it better. So,
Patricia?
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the app, that we have an City of Abbotsford app that you can download to a phone, and you can actually report an issue, and then it goes right to whether it's parks or whether it's roads or streets. You can take a picture and it takes your GPS location, goes right to the appropriate department, and then you'll get email updates when the case is closed or if it's been assigned. So that it would be a really good mechanism. There was actually a streetway that there was uneven paving, and I did it a couple months ago, and then I got a notification that it was case was closed and it was fixed. So so that is something that is already in place that can be used, that I think a lot of people don't know about. So as many people on the committee that can spread that is great. So
Okay. Good point. Okay, other comments or?
I have one more, and it involves buy-in from businesses and facilities and the community. It also heightens awareness. I know we have awards for, they'll have the Artie Awards for the Abbotsford Arts Council, awards for best restaurants. How about having the city of Abbotsford having some sort of awards for accessible businesses, to kind of highlight the importance of it and to kind of encourage other businesses to want to do better as well. Just a
Okay.
thought.
So we'll make note, that's an interesting idea. Thank you for that.
Currently, Small Business BC has a $10,000 grant for accessible upgrades for any business that has 50 employees or less. So it's not always, it has to be cost prohibitive for businesses.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Yeah, I think just for
Todd?
awareness through the chair, we have an economic development team, so we can certainly kind of bring them into the loop on that conversation, get some of their thoughts. So, thank you.
Okay, other thoughts? Anybody online has something they'd like to share or any? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Chair. I also have a child with autism and I'm part of a big online group with other parents that have children. So if there is ever any focus on accessibility for those types of accommodations, I would be happy to serve in those communities.
Thank you very much. We'll take you up on that and probably staff will be in touch and ensure that's in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the way, there was two people in the room that I didn't introduce, our two staff people, and perhaps you could just introduce yourselves. These are our support staff, and I apologize for ignoring you earlier.
It's okay, don't forget. I am.
They can't see you online.
Hello, everybody. I am Tammy Katola. I am the Assistant City Clerk, and I work directly with Gabriel Joseph, who's our City Clerk. Hi, I'm Katie McDonnell, and I work in the City Clerk's office. I deal with working with all the committees and helping prep the agendas and minutes after. So I'm usually here controlling or driving as much as I can.
So great. So these two ladies make us look good, right? So thank you very much. And all the documentation we'll receive in subsequent meetings will be prepared by them. So we do appreciate them very much. Yeah, go ahead, please.
I do have a success story, if this is something you kind of want to include, but my friend, her dad is 95, and he came to take care of his city taxes, and he's deaf, hard of hearing. And through this plexiglass, he couldn't understand what the clerk was saying, and he got embarrassed that he was standing there for so long trying to get the message, and then he left and he didn't have the right answer, so he went to the back of the line again to try to get back to the front. And someone, one of your staff, recognized that this was difficult for him and said, I'd like to help you in another area where it's quieter, and took him to an office where he could get everything done. She spent, I don't know how much time it was, this is Mr. Neufeld, Ellie Neufeld's dad. And he was so happy because he didn't want to say, I'm deaf, can you please help? Like, he was just flustered. But that was recognized and attended to. And so I think that speaks volumes to the staff just being aware and recognizing when individuals need that extra support and giving it. And so I don't know if anyone can do a kudos to the staff or just recognize that was happening, because those kinds of things, good stories, kind of help others go, I should be looking out for that more. Or if somebody is tired standing in the line, like, we should bring a chair. Or take a number and sit down.
That's reassuring. And I think our aspiration as council through this committee is, as this committee makes progress, that we'll have more and more stories like that. We'll look back and say, we did make a positive contribution with the committee, working together as a team here. So thank you for that. That's great.
And we do have a little internal system to recognize staff, so we will do so.
Yeah. Yeah, Pardy, go ahead.
Sorry, Chair, Todd stole my thunder. I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, any other thoughts? We don't want to take more time out of your busy day than necessary, but we're coming up to 1 hour, and we're not sure quite how long these meetings. I have a little anecdotal story, kind of a funny thing. Maybe we can wrap up with this. But I was going to the supermarket the other day, and was a very elderly gentleman being guided by a young man. So they're walking into the supermarket. I was behind them, and the older gentleman was holding the hand of the young man. So I had to move in front of them to open the door for them. It turned out that the young man was blind, and the old man was guiding the young man. You see what, the reason I mention that is, it was opposite of what I thought from behind. And I think sometimes when we look at folks that have accessibility issues, sometimes we don't quite know who that person is. And that's why I think this committee is going to be important. We're going to figure out who needs that attention, who needs that assistance from council, from this committee, and from you folks. So anyway, just a little story about how surprised I was that the person I thought had the accessibility really didn't have it at all. So kind of a funny story. Okay, any other things that we'd like to share with the committee? We'll wrap it up here. Now, we have a motion. Are we okay with that motion of adjournment?
You need a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, so this is a formal meeting as our clerk advised us, so we need a motion of adjournment, if that's in order. Moved and seconded, okay. Okay. All in favor? Contrary, we are adjourned. And our next meeting, we don't have a date picked out yet, I believe. Is that right, Gabriel?
Yes, we do have dates picked up.
We do have a date picked out?
Yeah, and those will be circulated to you this week.
Okay, so that'll be coming out. You'll have an agenda, and there'll be more information as these committees ensue. You'll have hopefully more information you can review. If you have some ideas, things you'd like to have added to the agenda, let us know, and we'll put them on the agenda and ensure that your viewpoints are considered. So thank you very much. Our inaugural meeting here, we're gonna really do some good things in Abbotsford, and thank you very much. And thank you, Patricia and the mayor, for joining us today. Great.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
service
Yeah.
as well. Much
Thank
appreciated.
you.